All right, so our new unit, our second unit, is called Plants for Food and Fiber. Our first topic is called People and Plants, and this will be split into two lessons. Our first part will cover the environment, food, and fiber, and then our second part will cover medicines, transportation, construction, and fuels. So today, we're just going to start looking here about items. Look at these items, and do all of these items come from plants? For example, a cotton towel. Does it come from plants? Cinnamon, vanilla extract, and so on, rubber gloves, and so on. So what are some of those things made of? And you'll notice here that some part of it does come from plants. So for example, cinnamon, it would come from a cinnamon plant. The 100% cotton towel comes from a cotton plant. Even things like the rubber gloves comes from the sap from a rubber tree. Other things like newspapers, wooden pencils, we know already those things come from wood. The classroom desk would come from wood as well. But some of those other things that we were talking about, like plastics and rubber, cellulose is coming from the wood, and some rubber also comes from the sap of a tree. All right, so this unit called Plants for Food and Fiber. So when we're talking about food, on the left-hand side, food such as wheat, cereals, sweet corn, fruit, and so on. For fiber, things like cotton from a cotton plant to make things like pillows and towels and lots of other things. As we go on, we will also talk about how plants are also used for medicines, and we'll talk a little bit about that in more detail as well. But some examples here, tulsi, the juice of the tulsi plant, the leaves are used for cough and cold. Turmeric, it's used in cooking, but it's also an anti-inflammatory. Amla plant, the juice is used for an upset stomach. It's good for the stomach. Aloe vera, which is a plant. The juice of aloe vera plant is good for the skin. It's also used for burns and so on. And then food, we already talked about, and fiber, like the wood can be used to make things like doors, paper, and so on. All right, so plants are used by humans for food and fiber. When we talk about fiber, that's the tissue of plants from the stem, the leaves, the seeds, or the roots. And then people use the fiber for many things like clothing, paper, and building materials. All right, so firstly, we're going to talk about plants in the environment. So plants have numerous uses in the environment. For example, plants, they use the carbon dioxide and they give off oxygen. We know that pollution, like industrial activities and automobiles, they are adding excess carbon dioxide and pollutants to the atmosphere. So plants help reduce this problem by using up that carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. So for example, a hectare of trees can remove over 10 tons of carbon dioxide each year. Plants are also the basis of most food webs. Herbivores and carnivores, they both rely on plants because carnivores are eating herbivores. Herbivores rely on plants as their food source. Plants and trees are also used as shelter by lots of different organisms. But plants and trees, they also clean and filter the water as well as prevent erosion of our soil. So the roots of plants prevent soil erosion because roots, they keep the soil in place and they prevent it from being washed or blown away in the wind. Just a fact here, did you know it takes about 4 large trees to absorb the excess carbon dioxide that's put into the atmosphere when one car is driven for 1 hour. All right, next we're going to talk about plants for food. So 75% of the world's food supply is based on these 7 crops: wheat, barley, rice, maize, which is corn, potatoes, cassava, it's a root vegetable, and sorghum. Sorghum is a grain. Next here, we're just looking at like this map of the world and some important crops that are grown all over the world. And we will talk about this a little bit more, but it just gives us an idea of what kinds of crops are grown in different parts of the world. Okay, this little activity, plants and their final product, is page 93 in the textbook. So basically what we're doing in this activity is try matching the plants with the products in which they are used. So A, B, C, and D, let's try to match which ones are used in which product here. All right, so let's take a look here. So A is chocolate. So this was A here, which goes with the chocolate here. So that is from the fruit of a cocoa tree. So West Africa and South America produce most of the world's cocoa. All right, so you take the beans and they're spread out in the sun to dry, then they get roasted, shelled, and then crushed in a factory. Then a giant press is used, which separates the cocoa butter from the powder in the crushed beans. Then the powder is mixed with milk to make the chocolate. B is oil, canola. So here for like canola and like margarine. So oil is from plants. In Canada, over 78% of vegetable oil production is from the canola plant. So oil is pressed from the canola seeds. And then canola oil is used for lots of like cooking and frying. It's also used in margarine. All right, next, C. So C was seaweed. It's got a very important element in there, a nutrient, iodine. It's also a valuable food source in some parts of the world. For example, in Japan, it's used in soup broths or dishes such as sushi. But products from seaweed are also used in ice cream, in chocolate milk and yogurt, and like so many more listed here. It's also used often to thicken food items as well. And lastly was D, which was this here, and that goes with the sugar. So those are beets, and almost half the world's sugar is coming from these sugar beets, which are grown in northern countries like Russia, France, Germany, Poland, United States, and Canada. We learn a little bit more about this in grade 8, but the sugar is found in the thicker part of the plant roots. The roots get shredded, then they get heated up in water to remove any impurities, and then there's a clear liquid that remains. It's very concentrated, then it is crystallized to produce a sugar. And different grades of sugar are produced, like brown sugar and so on. All right, so let's continue. So plants for fiber next. So plants provide fibers for a variety of needs, like clothing, paper, shelter. It's the fibers of plants that get separated out and processed, and then it's used for making those products. Aboriginal people from Canada's west coast, they wove clothing from the bark of the western red cedar. Today, much of our clothing comes from synthetic or manufactured materials such as polyester or nylon, but plants still provide important fibers to make cloth. The natural fibers are cotton, hemp, and flax that we're going to talk about. Here is just a little blurb about silk. Silk is the most expensive fiber in the world. It's not produced directly from plants, but it wouldn't be able to be made without plants. So it's the leaves of mulberry trees that provide the food for the silkworm. And then it's the white caterpillars of the moth that eat those leaves and then start to spin their silk cocoons. So the first plant for fiber we'll talk about is cotton. So cotton, it's a natural fiber that has been grown and used by humans for centuries. It's used for clothing, plastics, and papers, even used for spacesuits. Cotton fibers are different from synthetic fibers because cotton is able to absorb moisture and then allows it to evaporate easily. It's currently the world's most important non-edible plant. So cotton fibers, they come from the plant's seeds. So they grow from the seed coat, which is the outer layer of the cotton plant seeds. The plant uses silky fibers to spread its seeds in the wind. These fibers are strong, flexible, they have a gradual spiral that causes the strands to interlock when twisted, and that's what makes them ideal for spinning into thread. Beneath the long fibrous hairs, there's a second layer of shorter fibers that are known as fuzzy fibers, and those are used to make, for example, cotton batting, which is the filling in quilts, rayon, and various types of plastics and paper. So here in this diagram, the flowers of cotton plants, they bloom in the morning, and by the afternoon they begin to wither. The next day they're like a rose color, and then they fall from the plant. And once the petals fall off, a boll develops, and after about 4 months it splits open, and then you can see the cotton inside. So we do have this video on cotton. I'll probably play it at the end. The next plant for fiber is hemp. It's the oldest cultivated plant in the world. The first Bible that was made on a printing press was printed on hemp. Early sails and ropes were also made of hemp. Some advantages of hemp is it has a less negative effect on the environment than other sources of fiber. It's also harvested in 1 year, whereas a tree takes decades before it's ready to harvest. Hemp paper can be recycled more times and more easily than paper that's made from wood. Hemp paper can be recycled about 7 times, wood paper about 4 times. Hemp paper, it also lasts longer than paper from wood pulp. Also, hemp is not eaten by most insects and pests, so therefore, if you're growing hemp, chemicals or pesticides wouldn't be needed to control any of the insects. Right, we do have a video on hemp there as well. But lastly is plants for fiber, which is flax. Flax is 2 to 3 times as strong as cotton, and it's used in, for example, varnishes for a hard, clear, protective finish. It's even used in some types of linoleum. It is a food and fiber crop, and it's grown in the northern, cooler regions of the world. So flax fibers that are taken from the stem of the plant, they're 2 to 3 times as strong as those of cotton. And the fibers are just naturally smooth and straight. So Europe and North America, they depended on flax for cloth until about the 19th century, and that's when cotton overtook flax as the most common plant used for making clothes. Flax fiber is also used for making linen paper and for linseed oil. It's grown on the Canadian prairies for linseed oil, and then it's used as a drying oil in paint and varnish and in products like linoleum and printing inks. All right, so we will stop there. We'll discuss plants for medicine, transport, construction, and fuel in the next class. The homework for today is the worksheet called Uses of Plants, Part 1.